Hello friends, it's Simone here. I'm sharing my week 3 progress update on 31 inks, 31 pens, 31 letters. And I hope you noticed that I was able to say the hashtag correctly. Yay, go me. I am talking about days 10, so May 10th. Through today when I'm filming this, which is Thursday, May 16th. I am inking a pen with an ink every day for the month of May. And I'm writing a letter, or in this case, a little note, sometimes a letter to some of my friends. And yeah, so that's what I'm doing. Let's start. I'm going to show you what inks I pulled. I filmed my video for week 2 after I had already completed days 10 and 11 for pulling my inks. So I pull the inks blindly from a box first, and then I pick a pen. Day 10, I picked Taccia Ume Murasaki, and I was determined to throw back all inks that were purpley pink or teal. But this one, which is right here, was sent to me by my friend Casey, and she said that this is one of her favorite inks. And I always passed over this ink when I chose inks to put into my pens for my monthly ink ups thingies. And I didn't know why. And so I decided that even though this is a pinkish ink, I would go ahead and ink this up in a pen. And I picked my Esterbrook Estie with a broad sig nib from Franklin Christoph, and I am so in love with this ink. I also really enjoy the broad sig nib. I just really love the complexity of this color. It's not just any one color. It is this very bold, dusty pink, possibly. Maybe that's a good explanation for the color. It looks different on different papers. So here's my, let's call it ink bullet journal for 2024. It looks very different. Here it's more red leaning. I feel like it appears more purple on this Cosmo Air Light paper. This is Rhodia paper. What I also found very interesting is that this is the broad sig nib, and this is the medium sig nib. And I find that the difference between those nib sizes is enormous. So there's the writing up here, there's writing up here. I don't have this pen inked anymore. It would have been fun to see a comparison, like side by side. Well, side by side. Who says that I cannot? I'm just gonna write the same thing down here. For me, this almost seems like it's 1.5 nib sizes up instead of 1 nib size. But I do enjoy this one a lot, and I'm really grateful for my friend Lorelei, who swapped this nib against some ink samples, and I also sent her a nib to keep. So that's really cool. And this ink is one that even I'm keeping the sample, which is less than even a milliliter of ink. That's how much I like it. I want to use it one more time, but I think that after my ink buying moratorium, which hopefully will last until the San Francisco Pen Show. This is going to be an ink that I will buy, like, at the show. The next pen or ink that I pulled, another one of those that I pulled it out. I was like, oh my God, why? Turned out to be, again, another surprise. This is Robert Oster Motor Oil. On the Rhodia paper, it appears to be just brown, but there are some swampy undertones. There's green. It's really murky, and it's lovely. And I'm glad I put it into this pen because I really enjoy it in here. This is the Schon design Ultem full-size fountain pen with the Monarch medium nib. It's really tough to explain why this nib feels so good. It writes smoothly. It's super wet. The lines are bold. I really enjoy it. Even though it doesn't have a lot of bounce, and bounce is something, well, bounce is something that seems to be an important factor in the way that I choose my nibs and pens. So then on the 11th, after another ink, this motor oil that I pulled, and I was like, why do I have to use this ink now? After filming the video, that was a Saturday, I was here. I babysat my puppy for a while, and I had a little bit of downtime, and I kept thinking about this experiment. I wanted to write down my findings and numbers. And that's when I had the epiphany that, again, I am making the rules. And if maybe there is just so many samples in that big box that don't excite me right now, maybe I should just pre-select some. And so that's exactly what I did. I watched some YouTube on the big screen. I pulled a whole hand of samples out, and I basically did it like, okay, yay, nay, yay, nay. So I pulled out another smaller box that I threw all the inks that I was like, oh yeah, this one, yes, this one. And then I put aside all the ones that I was nay about, and I had a total of 5 of those rejects that I did not throw back into my big box, Project Inkdown box. So that was 2 things I learned from that epiphany, is that I might have been excited about an ink in the past, and just by the time that has passed, I'm not really excited to use it in a pen anymore. Maybe when I put it into this Inkdown box I was, but right now I'm not. And then with some I was very, yeah, I would love to try this at a later date, especially the teals and the pinks, but not right now. And then 5 were absolute no's, and I'm gonna bring them here and show them to you. I only have 4 left. I already sent out one of them. That was Robert Oster Barossa Gilt. That is a purple shimmer ink, and I'm not excited about shimmer inks. In general, I use them, but I don't love them, and so I'm always hesitant to want to use them or try them, put them in pens. And I have had quite some unpleasant shimmer ink experiences with Robert Oster. I hear other people do not, so that might have just been a singular, but it's still in the back of my mind. And so if I choose a shimmer ink, it's usually not a Robert Oster shimmer ink. And so I decided, you know what? You have had this in your sample stash for so long, let it go. This one is one of those in the same realm. This one is Winter Carol. I know that winter inks always have so much shimmer in them. And it's a red, so it's not necessarily one that's drawing me in because of the color. And so I decided, okay, you know what, let it go. This is one of those lighter blues, jeans blue. Maybe not exactly similar or close to Wearing Ghoul Sedna, but in the same realm. I'm not excited about these inks. I said it in the other video. I'm actually even more excited about these royal blue colors now, even though I have had to use royal blue during school and I didn't like them at all. After, for a long time, I'm more likely to use a royal blue than one of those washed out blues. And so it's okay. I can let this one go as well. KWZ Grapefruit was one where I have an orange ink that I already really, really love in my bottled ink stash. And KWZ inks smell like vanilla. It's not a scent that I enjoy using. And so why would I want to keep this in my stash? And I think I already tried or used this before. So it's not like it would be the very first time that I used KWC Grapefruit. And so I decided, yeah, let's go. And then I also am passing along Wearing Ghoul Pride and Prejudice. How many magenta inks can you try until you settle on one? And I have. I just realized this week. And so it's good for me to just let this one go. So I'm going to put these aside. So I talked about all of the 5 inks that I put aside. There were a lot more inks that I said nay to for the moment that went back into the Project Inkdown box, which is a bad and a good thing. The good thing is it's not that I'm over all of my ink samples. That is a good thing. The bad thing is that the number is not decreasing as fast as I hope it would, but that's okay. After the 11th, so that was here, I could already feel a change when I pulled the next ink on Sunday. And that was Diamine Brandy Snap. This is an ink that I have used before, but when I created that Project Inkdown box, I threw in all the samples and the Diamine Inkblend calendar inks because I hadn't used many of them. This one was one that I threw back, like that I destashed from day 10 or 11, not sure. It's a light green ink. I usually don't enjoy these very light inks, and so I just am passing it along. Yes, so Brandy Snap. Brandy Snap is an ink that I actually purchased a bottle of recently in a group buy. So it's held hostage at a friend's house for now, until I see them at the San Francisco Pen Show. And I pulled it, and the first thought was, oh my God, why? Because I was actually scared that I would use this and find out that I didn't want a bottle of this ink. I put it in to the Lamy LX Maron and put on my 14 karat broad nib. This has such a clunky tipping up here. You can even see it from here. There's so much tipping on this nib. It's incredible. And it was super wet, but I loved it. And so because I found that I would love to show you how these inks and pens write, I'm going to do these writing samples here. So look at how bouncy this nib is. And I find this super impressive because it's such a small nib. And you get more bounce and more you know, line variation from this than some of the more expensive pens in my collection. Look at how this looks. Oh my gosh, so good. So good. It's like I am floored by all of the gold nibs, Lamy gold nibs that I have purchased. I'm so glad I decided to go with that. So here, I think that possibly this nib might have a little bit of baby's bottom. I haven't checked it under the loop yet, but there is some hard starts sometimes on downstrokes, which would be an indicator that it might have baby's bottom. Diamine Brandy snap. And because I have decided, let's see how long, if I can actually adhere to this, that my goal at the San Francisco Pen Show is to get nibs fixed, ground adjusted, not buy any pens, possibly buy some inks. I think that from now until the end of August, I have enough time to figure out what nibs need to be adjusted, and then I have enough budget to get as many things fixed, looked at as possible. This is the Lamy LX in Maroon. And this broad nib is super broad. 14K broad. I'm floored that this body is definitely one of the more expensive ones. It's an LX and it is definitely, I think it's on the $50 range. But you can put these gold nibs onto the Lamy Safaris that are, how much are they? If you buy them on Amazon, you can buy some of the regular lineup for $18, and then you get a gold nib, and then you have a gold nibbed pen for $80. Well, that's a little bit. I purchased these gold nibs from Endless Pens. These are the rose gold. They are $74. And the gold, not the rose gold, the gold ones are, I think, $71. But I wanted the ones that were in stock. And so I opted to choose to pay the $3 more. So yeah, I am absolutely smitten by both. The ink color, it reaffirmed that the purchase of the bottle was not a mistake. The next ink that I picked was Anderillium Viceroy Butterfly Orange. And I think of all of those, this is my favorite one. The Anderillium inks, and I am, well, not circling because it's not a circle, outlining the ink colors that I'm keeping. And I outlined it, and then I decided, after I added the swatch down here of Dominant Industry Earl Grey tea, that I don't need to keep this. I would love to, but really there is not a lot of difference. And so I'm just going to pass this along to someone else who can enjoy this beautiful bright ink. I put it into the Sailor Pro Gear Imperial Black because that is something that I enjoy doing. I love putting bright, bold inks into black pens or boring colors. Maybe I need to floss this, or there is a little bit of a misalignment in the tines, especially going down here, day 13, because otherwise it's okay. Teen, Anderillium, Viceroy, Butterfly, Orange. Just fits barely. Can you see how it darkens? It's very bright orange in the beginning, but then it gets this brownish, or I can't even say what color this is, especially with the Diamine Brandy snap on right above, it looks like it turns a little bit browner, but maybe it's a different color and I just can't recognize it right now. So this is the Sailor Pro Gear Imperial Black with a medium nib. Yeah, these pens, all of the pens that I picked are super lovely, and I really enjoy using them. At the end of this video, I will talk about the pens that I haven't picked so far and try to figure out if there is a pattern that I can see. Next ink that I pulled was Rohrer and Klingner Solferino. Yup, another magenta. I love magenta inks, but after I swatched this and used this, I have actually found that I have a favorite. And it's not, spoiler alert, it's not the ink that I have a bottle of. I put it into my Walltown Watts with a turned Penco blank. This is the Sebastian blank, and I just love the sparkle of this. This is my only hand-turned pen for now. I'm hoping to add one really soon. I'm waiting on the maker to let me know that the pen is finished and I can pay. This has a standard Jowo nib, but I believe that this nib was tuned. It's super wet. It's extremely smooth. I purchased this pen pre-loved, and it was offered, I think, with a medium nib, and I asked the seller if they had a fine and would be able to swap it. I think that's what the nib, I'm actually not really sure right now. Rohrer and Klingner. And it's, to me, this person is a well-known member of the pen community. And so I would expect or assume that they only have nibs in their stash, even if they haven't used them yet, that would be exceptionally well tuned. Walltown pens. It's the Watts model in Sebastian with a fine nib. And I used to call this alicorn poop when I was reading the Keeper of the Lost Cities series. But when I switched to listening to audiobooks, unfortunately, the narrator of the audiobooks does not do it for me. And so I had to stop, which is sad. I'm stuck in, I think, books 5 or 6. So the alicorn poop isn't as prevalent anymore, but I would assume that this is exactly what alicorn poop looks like. Another thing that I realized when I used this pen is that I think this is the most comfortable pen in my collection. I just love how this feels. I love when pen makers, so let me pull this one out because I want to compare these two. I think I would have to measure this, but to me, this section feels a tiny bit narrower than this one. And that makes it less comfortable for long writing sessions. This one is perfect. And then it has this little flare up right here so that your fingers don't slip over the edge, the bottom edge of the pen onto the nib. And even though usually my fingers don't slip, just having this here makes me grip my pen less tightly. And so, yeah, I just love this. And I would probably add more if there was a blank that I would love. I mean, Walltown Pens drops their pens once a week, I think usually on a Monday. And there's always at least one that really looks lovely. But I also, I have one on commission right now from a different pen maker, and I'm really excited for that one too. And also, I don't need that many pens, and especially with the Diovo nib holders, which is, it's not condescending. For the nibs and pens are awesome. But there's still the question of how many of these do I actually really need or want? And so the blank really, really has to make it for me in order to add another one of those, especially because the nibs, as I said, they're swappable. So if I want to use a different nib in the swats, I can just easily swap it out. And then, yeah, everything works great. And I only can write with one fountain pen. So I, you know, see my dilemma here? The next, that was yesterday, when I pulled this, I was, okay, another Pilot Iroshizuku ink. And the first thought I had, because I had already inked my Platinum 3776, the Pilot Iroshizuku inks are basically my go-to inks for this pen, as well as for my Platinum 3776, which was here. Oh, I was going to talk about the color of the ink. I loved this ink. It's wet. It flows well in this big swatch. It had, here it's a little bit darker on this paper. In this swatch, it has this lovely greenish sheen. But it was just a tiny bit off. And because I had already used so many of these magentas this month, well, purples, I was able, even though I was kind of sick of all of those bright purple magenta inks, it also helped me hone in on what exactly it is that I love about the magenta and which magenta is my favorite. And it's Yamabudo, because it is just a tiny smidgen redder than the Diamine Deep Magenta, as well as the Solferino. This leans more blue. And I actually think that this looks flatter than this. So and it's a little bit more blue, I think. This is right. So this is red, the most red of these, then this one, and then this one, I believe. That's the impression that I get from looking at these inks. But yeah, it is this one. For some reason, Pilot Iroshizuku inks are super deep. I don't know how to describe it, but every time I've used a Pilot Iroshizuku ink this month, and this is the third, 1, 2, 3, it felt like there was a depth to the ink that wasn't paralleled by many of the inks that I have used. This one has just something to it. The Taccia ink is one that I would consider holding up to the depth, the interest that these inks hold for me. And then I swatched this one, put it into my Pilot Vanishing Point. They are quite wet and flow really well in pens that have given me trouble, and this one is one of those, as well as my Pilot Platinum 3776. And every time I have a great experience, and I'm really drawn to, I almost clicked buy yesterday on Amazon because they're only like $15.75 for a big bottle. I thought, wow, that's cheap. But then I remembered, I want to go through my whole bottle stash before I add more bottles, so that I can weed out all of the inks that I purchased as bottles that might not live up to my expectation anymore. This pen and we have a love-hate relationship. I love the color. I purchased this, was my almost first gold nib pen. I have these two I bought together from Pensachi in September of 2021, I believe. And they were the only gold nibs for a long time until I realized that this one didn't actually have a gold nib. It had a steel alloy nib. And I did not experience the same thing as other people did when they talked about their pilot vanishing points. Then I upgraded this at the San Francisco Pen Show 2022 when I purchased a gold nib for this. And the writing experience was really great then. But I always struggle when the first 5 lines using this pen, I'm like, why does it feel so weird? And then I get used to it. And so yesterday I talked about this on Discord, and all of my friends said, you know what? You should just let it go. And then I used it in a letter that I wrote, and I questioned myself because it felt great. It wrote lovely. I didn't have any issues writing with this, and I don't know. It's weird. I probably maybe I'll let this go at some point. I've been talking about letting this pen go for a while now, but all of the talk about culling collections, fountain pen shame, which this is not necessarily a shameful to keep this or to sell it. I don't feel shamed, but all of this talk about this made me realize that I'm not in desperate need to sell this pen. I don't need to fund a new pen. I'm not buying a new pen right now. I already have the funds for the commission that I talked about earlier. So I'm in no hurry to let go of this pen. And so I can just keep it and experiment and use it more until I'm really sure that I don't want it, or until I'm really sure that I want to keep it. So I'm just gonna work with this so far. So yeah, I'm really drawn to Pilot Iroshizuku inks, and these, along with the Taccia Ume Murasaki, might be some of the first bottles that I purchased. This one is lovely too. But remember how many inks I have in this color? So many. Which brings us to the very last color for this week 3 update, which is Diamine Cherry Sunburst. And that is the ink that I pulled today. And when I pulled it, I was like, oh yes, I am getting to use this. I almost purchased a bottle sight unseen of this ink because I knew I was going to love it. Sometime in the beginning of January, I believe, Leanne from Leanne Likes shared a video. I think Diamine Sepia was among those inks that she shared, Cherry Sunburst, and I knew that I would love all of those inks. And to be honest, I don't know why I went out and bought this bottle when I already know that I love Diamine Brandy Snap. And because we are here and I can do whatever I want, I want to see how this looks right next to this. So this is definitely much more saturated right now. But today when I pulled this and I was so excited, then I swatched it. I'm like, what was I thinking? How I was in this, yes, of course. She tells me and she shows me on this video how much I want this, that I would have purchased a bottle, like I did purchase a bottle of this ink. And I still can't explain why exactly I bought a bottle of sepia when I have Brandy Snap. And I want Brandy Snap more than I wanted sepia. So now this has to dry. Ha ha. Oh, I need to provide a writing sample. That is perfect, because then this can dry and we can continue talking about Cherry Sunburst. I also think that Diamine Sepia is much drier than Brandy Snap, which is something that I don't understand. I always thought that similar colors in the same color family would have a similar flow issues or wetness, like all of those light purple inks. They always have flow issues, but doesn't seem like it. So, okay, let me put this to the side for it to dry. And everything just fell, but that's okay. You're used to my unorganized videos by now, and so we'll just keep to the brand. This nib is super bouncy as well, and it's also a very small nib. Maybe it's the shape of the nib that makes it so bouncy. It's definitely more bouncy than the other Pilot nibs, the Pilot Custom 823 and the Pilot Custom 74, day 15. Pilot Iroshizuku, Fuyu, Syogun. And then this one is the Pilot Vanishing Point Deep Yellow with an 18 karat medium nib. This one is a 21 karat. Okay, so is this dry yet? I can just write. Well, let me talk about what the issues are. So Cherry Sunburst and Cherry Sunburst, or actually Leanne, but please, it's not Leanne's fault that I thought that I needed this ink, but Leanne made me think that I wanted this color really badly. And then my friend Casey again told me that she would send me a sample of this so I wouldn't have to buy a bottle. I'm so glad she did, because what was I even thinking? I know that I do not like Diamine Oxblood, which has this really, when it's dry, it's totally okay. It still looks bloody, but it has a green hue to it when it's wet. And this is the exact same thing with this color as well. I also found it really interesting that it dried this, it got this grayish hue on top of it. Ancient Copper doesn't have that. Diamine Oxblood doesn't have that. This is happening to some of the inks on the Cosmo Air paper, not all, but I don't know if you have noticed that this is happening a lot on Tomoe River paper, actually. So I'm just going to put this paper here so that I can turn it around. So, and I'm glad it's just a sample. I'm glad I can look at this and laugh about this and say, wow, you were caught in the FOMO, like really badly. Makes me rethink and look at all of my purchases or want to buys with another eye, just making sure that, yes, I'm not buying this because I saw it somewhere else and I really want this. So there is definitely something to be said for samples, for friends who have the inks that you fear you need in your collection, because this definitely saved me spending a little bit of money for that. So now the pen that I picked is the Sailor Pro Gear King of Pens with a broad nib. And I just said earlier that I really love all of the Lamy gold nibs that I have in my collection now, which is extra fine, medium, and broad. Yes. Yeah, I did it, you know. And I love them. I really, truly do. I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't expect them to be so fabulous. And there is a thought forming in my head that goes something like this. So why do you have all of those expensive pens in your collection when you can be happy with these nibs? What is the reason these are in your collection? And so I thought, well, then let me use all of those in the next days when I think an ink would really perfectly match those pens, and see how they compare. And then decide whether they still have a place in my collection or not. But that's actually dangerous thinking, because what exactly am I comparing? It's like, yes, it's a fountain pen. Yes, it's a nib. But it's basically comparing apples and whatever, peaches. Apples and pineapples. There's apple in the word pineapple, but does a pineapple even look like an apple? No. The writing experience, yes, maybe one of those nibs will dethrone one of my more expensive pens and I will end up selling them. But how do I even compare those? What am I comparing? Like, this pen is super comfortable in my hand. The Lamy is also comfortable in my hand. So check. Day 16. Something that it's definitely needs to be said for Cherry Sunburst is that it is a very wet ink. What else am I comparing? The feedback? I mean, the nib sizes are like, look at these two nibs. This one is 21 karat gold. The other one is 14 karat gold. One pen is not affordable. The other one is pretty affordable, if you ask me. But when I'm writing with this, I'm getting something from it. And of course, it's not exactly the same writing experience. This is basically almost not usable because it's so wet. Sailor. It's different, but it's still good, you know? I think that's about the extent that I can compare these two pens, these two nibs to each other. I'm writing with this and I'm feeling good. I'm writing with this and it feels smooth. I'm writing with this. It has bounce. I don't necessarily enjoy this ink in this pen because it's almost too wet. It feels uncontrollable. I love when an ink is wet on the paper, but this is almost too much for me. But yeah, it has bounce. I did, now I need to move this away because it's still wet and not dry. It is bouncy. It flexes a little. I thought this was not as broad as the broad nib, but when I compare the two writing samples, I don't really see a huge difference in the line width. This might be just a tad bit broader than this, but because of the ink in this nib and because it's so extremely wet, it might also just add the tad bit more broadness to this nib. So what is my conclusion? I don't know. I wouldn't even know how to start comparing those. And I think the only thing that I can say, or when I say that all of those need to live up to these pens, is I can't even determine if this is better, the same, or worse. It's a great experience. I love writing with this pen and I want to keep it. That's as much as I can say about all of this. Now the ink, here is Diamine Oxblood, here is Diamine Ancient Copper. This was one of the first inks that I purchased, and I'm still picking this one over those two every time. I have a bottle of this one as well, but I already promised this to a friend, so this is leaving at the Sunburst. I'm meeting so many people and exchanging ink bottles. I need to start a list to be able to keep track of that. But yes, this is leaving my collection at the San Francisco Pen Show. So now let's talk about all the pens that I have not used. So one thing that I noticed quite very quickly is that I have not used any of the piston fill pens that I have in my collection. This one, and this one. I did use the TWSBI Eco. That is also a piston fill pen, which is right here, for 5 minutes when I tried copper patina in it, and it didn't work out. But I haven't used my piston fill pens yet. I know that, of course, because I have the Lamy gold nibs that came in while I was doing this project, there is a newness bias, so I wanted to use those. Okay. So I have picked those, but there is definitely something to be said for me and my preference that I prefer cartridge converter pens over piston fill pens, even though they are lovely. I haven't used the Lamy 2000. I haven't used my Scribo. I haven't used the Pelikan M800 yet. And those two are, these three pens are the most expensive pens in my collection. And I have just picked up this one today. I did use the Custom 823, but this is definitely a pain in the ass to clean, and I'm often wondering whether I should just go ahead and swap this out with a Pilot Custom 743. I'm not there yet because I feel like when I am moving, so the plan in my head right now, to more permanent ink pairings, maybe it might not be so hard to clean because it's the same color all the time, and I wouldn't be, well, no. Every time I look at this, I feel offended by this pen because it doesn't let me clean it and dry it out completely. And I have soaked this for a while, for a couple days. I flushed it, and every time I walked by it, I would flush it with fresh ink, would leave the ink in there, I would shake it, I would expel the ink, and I would let it sit with fresh water in it for a while. This is just, or maybe I shouldn't see that there is ink in here. I believe there's probably the same thing happening in this pen, but I just don't see it, or in this pen. But I haven't used these yet. that is something that is concerning. I haven't used any of my Benu Euphorias. I used the Benu Ambrosia, but I haven't used any of the Euphorias, which is weird because in one of my videos I said I prefer the Schmidt nibs over the Jowo nibs. But of course, because the Jowo nibs are more common, I have all the specialty nib grinds in my Jowos. And so if I want to use a specialty nib, I have to pick one of the Jowo nibs, Jowo pens. Another thing that is concerning is this one. I haven't used my Monte Grappa Elmo. And I love this pen. I love how it feels in my hand. But for some reason, I've skipped it every time. So I still have this out of commission right now. This is my Custom 74. That's why I haven't used this yet. I also haven't been drawn to use my my Platinum 3776 with a broad nib. I said I had plans for this, but I currently am not sure if I'm still having those plans. I need to think about this, but yeah, it's not concerning. It's just, it makes me wonder why I haven't picked it yet. And I'm glad it's only the 16th because, of course, I can now make a concerted effort to use those pens to see how I love or don't love them. And then I haven't used this one. And I think the reason why I haven't used this pen again is because of the music nib and because I'm afraid of it. So I guess maybe tomorrow or any of the other days I will use this one. And I think the reason why I haven't used the Scribo is the same thing. I'm afraid that I will be disappointed by the nib, especially after being so excited about the gold nibs. It makes me really hesitant to use this because I'm afraid that I will be disappointed. And if you all remember, this was my birthday pen and it was supposed to be the best pen ever. And I don't know if this is what it is. And so, yeah, that's why I haven't used this one. And I can also tell you why I haven't used this one. Because of the cleaning, but also because I just recently purchased, or I used this a couple times since I got it, and every time I cleaned it, I put it into my ultrasonic cleaner. And I think what happens with the ultrasonic cleaner is it takes out the lubricant that is here to make the piston move up and down smoothly, and it was so hard to get the piston to move up and down. And then I watched a pencast, was one of the more recent ones this past month. Like, go back the last 4 episodes and it's in there somewhere, where they talk about the grease, to the silicone grease that they suggest to add to here. And you can do that by unscrewing the nib and then going in with a toothpick and just pulling this all the way down and then adding the grease right here. And then by moving the piston up and down, it distributes evenly down in here. Now it moves much better. And I can use this again. I will definitely not make the mistake of cleaning this pen with the ultrasonic cleaner again. Or if I do, then I know that I need to make sure that the piston is greased enough. But the one thing that really upsets me about this pen is that it feels like it's not closing all the way. It's so easy to unscrew. and it doesn't give me the feeling that it's closed, and I'm afraid that I will be over tightening this over time. So that's the reason why I haven't used my Pelikan M800. But now that I'm talking about them, I'm glad I'm filming these videos. I want to use them. I want to see how I feel about them. I don't want to be afraid of using the pen. And then I use it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I love this so much. What did I think? Yeah, so I'm excited. What I don't want to do is double up on any of the pens. I have enough to fill 31 days. So I definitely do not want to double up on any of the pens that I have inked prior to today. And so I will have to use them eventually. All right. I think in my last video, I also said that I would pick winners, but I don't want to do that just yet. I'm going to wait. I'm collecting all of my samples from each week in a different bag. And at the end of the month, I want to just pick favorites and swatch them again. And if I sent them out prior to that, I don't have those inks with me anymore. So what I'm going to do is send them out after I'm completely done with this project. I have fallen behind in my letters, but luckily today is my day off and I can catch up. I did not write a letter on day 16 is day 14, and so I wrote that one yesterday, and then I didn't write the letter for day 15, and so I need to do day 15 and day 16 today, and then I'm back on track. And I'm really excited that this is going so well. I'm glad I was able to just change a tiny bit, a tweak, pre-select some samples, and now I'm really excited every morning to pick them. Didn't think this small change would do the trick for me so that I would be more excited about all of this. Okay, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.